Throned in splendor, immortal Aphrodite, child of Zeus, enchantress, I implore thee, slay me not in this distress and anguish, Lady of Beauty. Hither come, as once before thou camest, when from afar thou heardst my voice lamenting, heardst and camest, leave thy glorious father's palace, golden, yoke thy chariot fair, the doves that bore thee, swift to darksome earth their course directing, lifting their thick wings from high on heaven down beneath earth. Quick they came, then thou, O blessed goddess, all in smiling, wreathe thy face immortal, bade me tell thee the cause of all my anguish. Why now I call thee, what for my maddened heart I most was longing, whom thou pride doth wish this sweet persuasion win or lead to thy love, my Sappho. Who is it wrongs thee? Though now he flies, soon shall he follow, soon shall bring gifts. Who now rejects them? Though now he love not, soon shall he love thee. Although thou wouldst not. Come and thou, dear goddess, and release me from my anguish, all my heart's desiring. Grant thou now, as before, be thou my ally.
Sappho was a brilliant fool. If I were really the benevolent goddess she mistook me for, I'd have put her out of her misery and left it to Hades to explain how she was actually better off dead. Tonight I'm going to do you a favor and tell you the truth.
Baby, now that I found you, I can't let you go. I built my world.
I got it.
You,
I get it.
need you so, oh, baby. even
From
though-
everyone, everywhere, I'm eternally supplicated. Cytherea, please, just this and nothing more. Or Astarte, I beg of you, ease my pain. Or Ishtar, grant me my heart's desire.
Hey, Venus. Hey, Venus.
Different names, but always the same old story. Tonight, you may call me Aphrodite. Everything you hear about me is true, more or less. I don't deny it. But you don't understand what it means. I'm the product of domestic violence. Oh, yes. Most people don't know that. Those who know my history don't like to dwell upon the ugliness. They cherish the fairy tales. They associate my appearance on this plane of existence with the painting by Botticelli. Oh, you know, the one where I float tiptoe and naked on a scallop shell, showered with blossoms and serenaded by cherubs, spotless, unsoiled, as though I had come from a sweet spring of pure water. But it wasn't like that. The Earth Mother Gaia was a very uneasy relationship with the sky god Uranus. It is predicted that one of their children will usurp his throne. Well, this doesn't prevent him from copulating and producing a large number of children, does it ever? Uranus, foolishly imagining he can avoid his fate, forces Gaia to keep their progeny prisoner in her womb. Gaia puts up with it for a while, but eventually she snaps and gives the knife to one of their sons, the Titan Cronus. She instructs him to sever Dad's package when he is in the midst of the act. Lovely. The amputated genitals are thrown into the sea, where the bloody members roil and froth. Voila, me. Aphrodite, foam-born, I arise out of the spume, perching on the aforementioned mollusk, upon which I float to Cyprus, where I disembark complete with nubile breasts, pubic hair, fully aware that I need to hide them from the public. Flowers bloom where I step, and birds sing where I take a breath. But I am not spotless. Oh no. Botticelli does you a disservice by ignoring that. Blood and sea foam dry and leave stains. My infancy, youth, and prepubescence take place in the space of time between the collision of Uranus's genitals with the sea and the first bits of spray that rose up from the impact. It's not much of a childhood. I have no tender artifacts, no kindergarten report card in which it is noted that I play well with others, no handmade clay heart imprint, imprinted with lace and glazed red to be pinned on my mother's loving breast, no painstakingly assembled picture albums. On the other hand, there's no high school yearbook with ghastly photos and puerile inscriptions. I don't languish long in Cyprus, where the flowers are piling up in unsightly heaps and the sweet air is becoming too cloying for mortals to breathe. I am introduced immediately to Olympus, the most exclusive nightclub with the biggest bouncers and the most impassive security retinue standing watch at the velvet rope. I have no trouble gaining entry to the assembled pantheon. Unknown as I am, my star quality is blazing. I waltz in. Who is she? How did she get past the door? How did she turn the page? Never saw her before. Can you believe those clamshells? Oh boy, Zeus and Ares are knocking over Poseidon in a rush to get her a drink. Yikes, they just trampled Ganymede, poor kid. He's just trying to butler the ambrosia. Haven't had this much fun since we went to watch Prometheus get his liver plucked out. Hera is giving Zeus one of her dirty looks. If looks could kill. Oh yes, that's right. Hera's looks can kill. They all want me. Zeus, son of Cronus, all-father, pretends at first that he didn't care that much who had me. Let them play is his initial attitude. In fact, he has a turner to himself. Hera, his wife, is a jealous harpy. She isn't bad looking for a matronly sort, but she could look like, well, she could look like me. It wouldn't keep Zeus faithful. He loves his fun, but it wasn't conducive to any sort of Olympic harmony. Zeus accepts the responsibilities as well as the perks of being keeper of oaths, cloud gatherer, and king of just about everything. He's supposed to keep the party mellow. So what does he do? He decides to marry me off. His lack of imagination is astounding, but he isn't the first, nor will he be the last patriarch who thinks that my powers can be domesticated by force of someone else's will. So be it. He looks over the likely prospects and finds, at least to some ways of thinking, the most unlikely one. I am wed to the lame, the geekiest, the most supremely talented Hephaestus, god of the forge. I did not protest, despite what you may have heard. And what have you heard? Well, there are two stories that make the rounds. First, there's the belt. The belt, the famous girdle of Aphrodite. Hephaestus didn't mean to harm my body. It was meant for deeper damage, the kind that you can't see but eats away your very being. Forged by my husband, the most distinctly resistible of the gods, for his wife, easily the most irresistible being, mortal or immortal. But if you think about it, you really think about it, no one could withstand my unclouded charms. No belt was needed for that. So why, Hephaestus, why? Why do you tell everyone that I resent this match? That I reject it because you're ugly? That not fair. You are a genius. The marvels you create are undeniable works of art. You don't understand how compelling artistry can be. I can overlook, no, it's not just overlook. I will embrace you no matter what you look like. If I love you because what you look like is, I love you because what you look like is part of who you are. If what you are is lovable, look at me, look through me. You can't. My physical presence is too much for you. You shrink before me, unable to perform. I know that the fury you aim at me masks your embarrassment and shame. Which is why he forged the belt. When I wore it, even the icy waters of his own self-loathing could not extinguish the all-consuming flame of passion it inspired in him. It was the only way he could bring himself to touch me. And I won't wear it. I only keep it to remind me of how the worst ugliness is to kin to the greatest beauty. Hephaestus and I could have been twin souls. The only other story that has stuck is the famous net incident. Hephaestus supposedly determined to catch me in the act with Ares, the god of war. Ares and I never made a secret of our liaison. Heph fashioned and cast the net in which Ares and I were, whoops, surprised in flagrant delectico. And the rest of our set came to mock us as we struggled to free ourselves. Ares and Heph were in on that together. How else do you think Heph got within casting distance of us? Ares loved showing off his prowess, and his public conquest of me was just the flip side of Heph's impotence. Ah, Ares, Mars, the god of war, all strength and passion. A body so smooth and silky it glistens in the dark. Oh, I want nothing more than to lick the supple skin stretched over rippling muscles in perfect proportion. What a torso, what powerful thighs. When you take me, I nearly melt back into the primal foam. You know how to touch each and every part of me. I know without looking when you come near because the downy hairs on my arms quiver in delight. Why aren't you here with me tonight? Why am I here discussing my most intimate feelings with strangers who only think they know me? Because I scare you just as completely as I petrified poor Heph. Struggle all you want to put me out of your mind. You can't. It's one battle you will never win. Ever. When Ares is making love, he was not fighting, and when he was not fighting, he was not in charge. The killing fields are his natural home, where he reigns supreme and control all the time. He liked to think of himself as a warrior, king lover, ruling his bed as he ruled the battlefield. But even the most powerful lover has an instant or two of complete surrender, if the act is successful. And Ares' case, since he's immortal, the instant of surrender was as long as eternity, and it made him very nervous, even as he rocked the heavens with roars of satisfied lust. Ares and Hephaestus were never rivals for me, not really. They are weaklings allied together to bring down a superior foe. Do you think it's only coincidence the worshippers of Ares are those who make war? Have collaborated with the minions of Hephaestus, those who make weapons? What is a warhead? A slingshot, a bullet, an arrow propelled from a taut bowstring, a rocket, motorized spurs shot from mechanical members, the best they can do. I pity them both. Because they know, as far as you mortals are concerned, I am more important than either of them. Kings throw down their crowns at my feet. Men of honor offer up their integrity. Irreproachable women lose their souls. I am known for my lovers, divine and mortal, every single one of them, so beautiful that vast mountains would bow before them and oceans rise up in celebration, whose love-making is exquisite and whose devotion to pleasure absolute. Everyone worships me because everyone wants love. This is the mistake everyone makes. I'm not the goddess of love. It's pleasure, not love, over which I reign. Oh no, Aphrodite, I would never curse you. Oh goddess, if you answer my prayer, I will make eternal sacrifice in your name. Oh, most beautiful one, I will be forever grateful and never dishonor the gift you grant me. We'll see. End part 1. Part 2. The expense of spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action. Until action, lust is perjured, murderous, bloody, full of blame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust, enjoyed no sooner, but despised straight, past reason hunted, and no sooner had, past reason hated, as swallowed bait, on purpose laid to make the taker mad, mad in pursuit and in possession so, had, having, and in quest to have, extreme, a bliss in proof, and proved a very woe. Before a joy proposed, behind a dream, all this the world well knows, yet none knows well to shun the heaven that leads men to this hell. Wise words. Shakespeare understood exactly what I'm talking about. That Billy, what a man. He's a scrawny little fellow with a ridiculously wispy beard he won't give up, but he can rhapsodize. You forget what he looks like the moment he speaks. Nice eyes, too. Of course I know him. We all know each other. And we have fun, too, when we aren't deeply depressed. Now, I don't expect you to sympathize. I'm not whining, just how it is. For every walk down the red carpet of eternity with paparazzi popping flashes and screaming fans with tears of joy streaming down their faces, there's a dark oblivion that engulfs us when we aren't being adored. Even with this downside, people strive to join our ranks. Well, you have to strive. It's very rare that someone gains entry without really wanting it. And we always welcome new blood. Elvis and Marilyn, for example. But the younger Elvis, that is. Not that fat, bloated creature in the white suit. No. The swiveling, sneering young one. Stacy. My sector of eternity is populated by characters who ignored sense, snapped their fingers at their own better judgment, and took the wild plunge, and landed poorly, if dramatically. Each has their own plotline, spectacular catastrophes that invite endless rubbernecking. Yes, that's immortality. Those who are remembered live forever. Here's my neighborhood. Nice, isn't it? There's my compound over there. Yes, it's on Valentine Place. Oh, it's a family joke. Since the actual Valentine, who lives quite far away from here in a cave, was a martyr who had no interest in either sex or love on earth, and by all accounts, not anywhere else either. Over here, you can see the home of Romeo and Juliet. And I must say, their place is an architectural wonder. So many balconies. Oh, yes. They are united in death thanks to the legion of high school English teachers who keep the memory of Billy's fabulous creations alive. Romeo or Juliet, so passionate. They were mad to sleep together. But their reputation mattered more. Marriage. That's what the whole fuss was about. Not sex. They could have had sex and slam bam, thank you, Juliet. It would have been a 10-minute play, if that, not an entire evening of theater. Oh no, she wanted a contract. And Romeo, he was party to it. He was all for commitment, but between you and me, it should have rung a warning bell somewhere in Juliet's brain that right after he agrees to wait until marriage for sex, he goes off and skewers his cousin with a very long sword. So they both die for love, and because of it are condemned to live forever. She is always withholding sex for something. A new ring, an ever more sleek convertible. And he goes wild. He can't kill anyone up here literally, but he manages to destroy his own existence until she can't take it anymore. And everyone within earshot is sick of the drama they generate. They make up for it for a while, filled with remorse for their own hasty actions, but 2 days later, they're at it again. It's exhausting. But let's say they do work it out, and the families reconcile for their sakes. They would be completely forgotten, like Romeo's less fiery cousin Sal and Juliet's plain Aunt Rose, who met quietly and married. No one cared. You never heard of them? Yeah, exactly. Now over this way, you can see a duplex. It's a two-family home. One side is Tristan and Isolde, and the other is a very odd menage a trois, Arthur, Guinevere, and Lancelot. Guinevere was married to Arthur. He was an old, rich, powerful monarch. She was young, fertile, well-connected. It was a marriage of convenience, complete with a very passionate, inconvenient affair between Guinevere and Arthur's most valiant king, Lancelot. Quite a mess at the time. Kingdoms fell and plenty of arrows were hurled. Oh, the realms of poetry, musical comedy, and political references they've inspired. She is a piece of work, hot-headed and beautiful and quite full of herself. But I like her, but you have to put up with her endlessly brushing her waist-length hair and her annoying campaigns to organize entertainments. Joust this, archery that. I mean, honestly. I have this thing about phallic symbols, as I've mentioned, and she can't get enough of them. And she feels very justified in having both men with her on her own terms. Well, more power to her. I suppose Arthur goes along with it because he has a thing for Lancelot. Oh, not an outright love thing. He just loves the company of men more than women. Sex is a bother for Art. If he lived when there was a way to pass on his DNA and therefore his title without having to physically mate, bingo, problem solved. With Lance, it's a male bonding thing. You know, the way soldiers love their comrades and athletes pat their teammates so affectionately on the rear. Art didn't want to fight with Lancelot, and he wasn't that angry with Guinevere. I can't say for certain what goes on behind closed doors. They're free to do whatever they want, consulting adults and all, but yet, are they sorry enough to go back and undo their deeds given the choice? Of course they're not. And then on the other half of the house is Tristan and Isolde. Lancelot and Tristan served together under Arthur back in their salad days, part of the Round Table. Isolde was shipped off to marry King Mark, rich geezer, another good political match, and her mother had sent her with a potion, an aphrodisiac. See how immoral I am? I inspire vocabulary. To make sure the wedding night is satisfactory. Tristan was a bodyguard, very hunky and quite the Eagle Scout. No, ma'am, we'll both regret it in the morning. So Isolde slipped him the drink and got him to drop, among other things, his scruples. Mark found out, and it didn't end well for anyone, except the poets. Mark, Lance, and Art. You can often see the three of them drinking mead on the porch, sharing a pipe. Ares will stop over and tip back a brew. Every once in a while, they are thrilled when he does that. Well, you would be too if you lived and died for war, and the god of war, if you lived and died for war, and the god of war came around just like he was one of the boys. The two women have told me separately how attractive they find Ares, but also how insufferable his manners are. Ares isn't nobility, so he has no courtly manners, not one shred of refinement. He's all about raw power. I don't believe Ares had had much luck seducing either of them. Well, let's continue. Now, here's a street I call Murderer's Row. Although its official designation on the municipal maps is Lovely Lane, Lovey Lane. Over there, in that Moorish-looking ranch, is Othello. Across the way is Desdemona's cottage. Othello, he was a sweet talker. And so convincing because he completely believed every word he was saying until he didn't believe it anymore. He couldn't believe she loved him, and his jealousy drove him to murder and suicide. I mean, he wasn't lying when he said he loved Desdemona. He just loved her to death. And don't tell me that you don't want to possess someone completely and be possessed by them. That's the ideal. The reality is a danger you need to consider. Do you want to give someone that kind of opening or be that kind of person yourself? Do you think it was an accident that he suffocated her? Oh, that's what love can do. Get in your face, block your nostrils, and clog up your windpipe so that when you gasp for a bit of life-giving air, all you end up with is a feel of down-stuffed cotton as your last sensation. And you're lifeless. And the person who is the instrument of your death wails and weeps and wonders what to do now that all reason for living is gone, and decides to commit suicide to join you. It's insanity. Over there is a wooded area. Ominous looking, isn't it? Dark and forbidding. That's not an accident. Anyone who walks up that path needs nerves of steel. I avoid it most of the time. Medea lives back there. If she wanted to cement her reputation as a witch, she couldn't possibly have picked a more sinister abode. Medea was a goth sorceress, all incense and charms. Jason was this straight-edge college quarterback type, clean-cut and very martial. It was doomed, but so hot while it lasted. He had been sent on an impossible task. No one expected him to live through it, but he wowed Medea, convinced her to leave everything for him, even killed her own brother. To his credit, he even married her, until he came to his senses, or lost them, I mean. He saw what he did to her kin. Blood red flag there. But no matter, Jason dumped her for a good girl. He's still sorry. Medea insists it was Jason who killed their children by killing his love for her. She reasons that the boys were tangible signs of their union and that when he was done with her, he signed their death warrant as surely as if he'd knifed them himself. In a pathetic way, her adamant refusal to admit one iota of remorse is a sign of grandeur. But it eats at her. One last warning tale, and in some ways the most chilling. Immortal love doesn't always end up with mayhem, murder, and despair. Baucis and Philemon. You've never heard of them, I imagine. Only a very few have. Well, they are celebrated in my mind, at least for a spectacular lack of imagination. It would be Ovid to whom they owe that honor. He's a strange little man, lives in a field of milkweed, tending flocks of monarch butterflies. Baucis and Philemon, one of the few happy mortal couples ever to be remembered simply for their simple goodness. They are the poorest couples to live up here, if you call undergoing photosynthesis living. You see, the two of them were visited by Zeus and Hermes, who were out playing gotcha with humanity, dressed like beggars on foot, incognito. Most of the people they visited slammed the door in the divine visages, which was exactly what the boys wanted. It was a total setup. Would you let nasty-looking beggars in? No, you wouldn't. Baucis and Philemon invited them in and proceeded to put on the most excruciating dinner party ever recorded. First the gods were invited in, then they had to be greeted, then everything had to be caught, then cooked, and in between was the dullest conversation ever held by mortal or immortal. It must have felt like 10,000 eternities to Zeus and Hermes. They can't sit still for 3 of your seconds, which is a decent amount of time for us. Eventually, the gods got around to the real business, which was destroying everyone else in the immediate vicinity. Baucis and Philemon had, alone of all the humans, passed the test of hospitality. So he offered to give them anything in the universe they wanted. Anything. Riches, power, youth, beauty, the ability to sing, to fly, become invisible, and all they wanted was to die at the same time. So when their time came, Zeus turned them into trees. Ha! There's your options. Go down in a searing ball of passion, fled flames, or slowly decompose into mulch. Oh, look, here's my place. I need a refuge. I do. People mistakenly equate astounding beauty with invulnerability. Homer understood, dimly, that it isn't so. Yes, he's here too, but he doesn't live in this neighborhood. He lives in the city, in a loft. He has fantastic parties with Helen Keller and Ray Charles. In the Iliad, he wrote a verse or two showing my needs, but of course, I come off looking like a ditzy blonde. He just laughs when I complain. It's hard to be angry with him for long. We all owe him so much of our immortality. To him, he can get away with plenty. During the Trojan War, when I am wounded trying to rescue my son, Homer has me flying up to Dion, who gets this one little credit as my mother. She owes him, because she's nothing, just a goddess of oak trees, not even a really interesting tree like a kapok. She isn't up to the task of spawning anything remotely like me. One moment, I've lost my place. Yes, remotely like me. Don't you worry your pretty little head is what I'm told. And I don't. Other people would pick up after me. They always do. They can't help it. But I still need a place for myself. I require plenty of downtime. About that apple and the whole Helen of Troy debacle, she wasn't the one I meant when I offered Paris the most beautiful woman in the world. No, the most beautiful woman in the world was Ellen, a handmaiden to Helen. She's absolutely stunning. Her face could launch a few thousand ships. But she was a poor relation and had no connections, really. Paris didn't want her. He couldn't even see her because Paris was a shallow little twit, the product of hereditary inbreeding. So when he went to Sparta, he simply put the moves on the queen. I mean, everybody assumed I meant her. She was pretty enough. I never corrected them. I should have, I suppose. Paris would have had to obey me. Death and destruction would have been avoided. But then you would have neither the Iliad nor the Odyssey, so I suppose you should thank me. Oh, and over there, down the hill from my home, is where my son Eros lives with Psyche. Notice the windows are boarded up. They have been broken too many times by the Grecian urns they hurl at one another during their domestic disputes. Oh, they got what they wanted, all right. If this doesn't put you off your request for love, I don't know what will. Eros is not a baby fat cherub with little wings and a quiver of arrows. No, he's not a muscled athletic swain either. Look, how can I best put this? He's a frump. He won't stand up straight. He bites his nails. He wears what's left of his hair, Zeus help me, in a hideous comb over. Why else do you think that he only appeared to Psyche in the dark? Psyche, a very lovely girl, I will grant you that, is completely mindless in her devotion to Eros. It worked out very well for her financially. Well, it did, but I don't want to sell her short. Her father was a king, so she would have been comfortable. She's simply a barnacle. But no one sees that as a problem. Her press is absolutely stellar. But I come off looking like a nasty mother-in-law, jealous and vindictive, and the two of them get this beautiful love story. It's in all the anthologies under Cupid and Psyche. By the time she saw what he really looked like and understood that she had the intellect of and he understood that she had the intellect of a tree stump, it was too late. Now I have washed my hands of it. Yes, so they live ever after. She's all blousy now. Eros is still gratified by her complete devotion. Pleasure, their daughter, well, she can't stand it. She lives way over in another district. I have to visit her. She won't speak to either of them except at holidays. Let me recap. Love is impatient. Love is not kind. It is furiously jealous. It boasts until you're sick of hearing about it, and it suffers from hubris. It's rude, self-seeking, with a hair-trigger temper and grudges held for centuries. Love doesn't always fail, but it's more intriguing when it does. I hope you've seen through enough to rethink all you believe about love. Think twice about what you ask of me. End of part 2. Intermission.
Help yourself to some.
Then, I see I need to tell you one last story. Eudes, who according to Wikipedia was king of Sicily and beloved of Aphrodite, who gave birth to his son Eryx. This and nothing more. Ah, Brutus, a king of Sicily. Perhaps this conjures up the image of a turreted castle, glittering women, and armies of virile soldiers riding stallions, bearing plunder. No, not even close. Sicily is an island of dreams. Picture a sea, not the phony blue sea of a postcard and the rake sand of the luxury hotel beach. No, no. Picture the sea of desire. Oh yes, there is such a place. We all carry some of it with us. Do you think it coincidence that the act of love is heralded by juices? Exquisite liquids, excruciatingly delicious, wrung from our bodies when we are the most ecstatic? That's the sea I'm talking about. The coast of Sicily. At the time I'm telling you about was the sea where everyone swam to replenish their vitality, gods and mortals alike. Brutus had no need of palaces, courtesans, or armies. No one there did. Every Sicilian was a monarch. But I didn't know that much about it. When I wasn't on Olympus, I was tending my supplicants in Cyprus and Anatolia, or just enjoying myself, but it was easy to grow tired of Hephaestus droning on about his latest invention or his most recent imagined insult, and even more aggravating to appease Ares' bloated ego. I was tired of the gaming and the coy steps in our dance of influence. I'd been around long enough to realize that my power was untapped and that I frightened the others with my potential. But I was lazy and indolent and young and not particularly ambitious. I pleased myself. And if others were pleased in the process, so much the better. If not, I didn't care. This day, the day it began, I was restless though and unsatisfied. Something like the way I feel tonight, only then I didn't recognize it for what it was. So I went to the island of dreams to bathe in the sea of desire. And as I lay naked in the sun to dry, I saw a man who didn't see me. He was completely engrossed, teaching a young girl how to spear a fish. This intrigued me. First, that my presence didn't announce itself, and second, that he was teaching a young girl. But I didn't want to incinerate either of them accidentally, which is a hazard mortals faced in those times when gods walked more freely on the earth. So I cloaked myself in the guise of a maiden and went over to observe. "Ah, my beauty," he said to me. "You wish to learn?" "Indeed." And he smiled at me. And that smile was the first smile anyone had even bestowed on me that had nothing to do with my power or position. It was a smile of a young man for a pretty girl, a smile with no malice, no calculation, no venom, no lust. A good-natured smile on a day when nature was good. I was nearly split in two by conflicting forces, the desire to weep for the innocence I would never have, and the desire to make him kneel. "Show her," he told the child. "Is this your daughter?" I asked the girl, expertly impaled, as the girl expertly... "Is this your daughter?" I asked, as the girl expertly impaled a squid. "Yes," he said. "This is Mila, my beauty." The girl smiled up at me, and in her face, which resembled his only in the shape of her lips, I saw the loveliness of her mother. My split self was instantly inflamed by an unreasoning jealousy for this woman who had the prize I could never win. A simple, loving man, a sweet daughter. I wanted to be her, and I wanted to kill her. "I can see you have a beautiful mother," I said. "Lucky child." "Not so, no," he replied, "not so." The child became sad. "Mama has gone ahead to wait for us." I looked at him quizzically. "Not in this world," he said, "the next." Ah, a wifeless man with a motherless child. My resolve was struck instantly. The gods had seen fit to remove the woman from her treasures. I would claim them for my own. And so I did. I lay my belt and my mirror aside, and I became the spouse of a Sicilian king. In our kingdom, we wanted for nothing. Food came from the sea, drink from the vine. The winters were mild, the summers pleasant. When wind and rain did come, we found shelter in the mountain caves or overhanging cliffs of the sea. We made love, we laughed, we fought, made up, made love again. I was, for the only time, before or since, happy. And he had no idea. My absence was hardly noted in the halls of Olympus. No one cared. It was assumed I was frolicking with a mortal and would get over it, and back to my post eventually, ensuring that passion and fertility would not abate. Those fires only needed the occasional stoking. As the years rolled by, I had no interest in returning to my divine post. I phoned it in. Hermes would visit occasionally. We'd stroll languidly in the warm sun, and he'd amuse me with the latest gossip, how that brave warrior was now a constellation, and this unfortunate maiden a cow. Or what mortal had come to regret his hubris and why. But the gossip never made me homesick. I did have the occasional fling with Ares. He and I never mixed up pleasure and love. Our sexual encounters were fun, and yet I had no desire to fly back with Ares to anywhere. He had no desire to plead for my companionship. He had his war comrades for that, and I could do without him. No. It was the love I made with Beutis that was irreplaceable. And for the first time, I had cause to wonder that man could be more compelling than a god. And so I was left in peace. But it wasn't to last. I blame myself. In short, because I became pregnant. Well, I see you're wondering what was so sinister about that, and I am on record as the mother of at least 15 children, and it's true I am. And bearing children is not the same problem for me as it might be for another less connected being. My health care is excellent. The physical perils of childbirth was not to be feared, and rearing them, I bore immortals. They emerged from my divine womb and met their destinies. I never had trouble myself. But the second I conceived this one, I undertook to destroy my own happiness. You see, I didn't realize this at first. Beutis was transported with delight. He was so proud. There was nothing he wouldn't do to make me comfortable. But he was terrified as well because his first wife had died in childbirth and he loved me so much. We even talked about getting rid of it. Even in those days, people knew how, and he would have allowed me to do so. That's how much he feared losing me. But I knew that part would be fine, and once I communicated my serenity to him, he was able to bask in a sign of our growing life together. He was more tender than ever, more loving, more strong. We were perfectly in tune, and I have never been more content. Which is when the warning signals started to flash. And I loved Beutis. I loved his Mila. I loved the child growing within me. And with every increase in my love, there was a corresponding increase in dread. Even in the sunniest day, I began to feel a dark shadow around my heart. I couldn't think it away. I couldn't ignore it. Every time Beutis and I walked quietly down a trail, hand in hand, or Milo laughed, the shadow grew and the cold gripped me, even in the sun. And one day when I thought I was alone, Beutis found me crying, and when he asked me why, I thought of telling him all. I even began, I am a goddess. He laughed. I know you are. You're my goddess, and I worship you. Well, I couldn't tell him. It would make everything wrong. And so I continued, enjoying every precious minute, for I began to understand they were numbered. The day of the birth came, and the labor was smooth, the baby healthy. We named him Eric's. I was attended by local women. When they handed me my son, for one brief time the cloud lifted. He was a perfect child, strong little legs, a hearty cry and a handsome brow. My love went out to him, surrounding him like a soft blanket. His eyes, so like his father's, so like his mortal father's. I was gripped for the first time in my existence, and the last with unreasoning terror. I looked deep within the eyes of my mortal child. And that's when I lost my nerve, and in doing so lost all. I left. Yes, just like that. I turned and I fled and I flew back up to Olympus. I ran to my palace, past the vast windows with their view of the oceans and the mountains and the vistas of the eternal, found a small hidden corner behind one of the thrones of glory and wept. I wept for days, causing floods of destruction. I wept for my love, I wept for myself. Oh, how I hated myself at that moment, how I cried. I drained myself with crying, and I haven't shed a tear since. In the eyes of my infant son, I saw, for the first time, myself in the center of a vast web of connections. I saw my baby being held in the arms of his father and heard their laughter as they watched Mila making faces for their amusement. And I saw his first steps and Mila's first kiss. I watched with an expanding love as well as an apprehension that outpaced it. There were children and their parents all touching one another, and by extension me, with their concerns, their joys, and most horribly, all of their fates. Some were happy, some were cruel, some had the gift of loving, some had the gift of laughter. A lucky few had both, and too many had neither. I could never make an unconserved move ever again. My action, my words, even my thoughts would now affect and be affected by others. The instant that I looked into my son's clear eyes, I cared more than I cared for myself. I understood bitterly that Butis, Mila, Erix, all of them must die. All of them, no exemption. Sooner or later, death would claim them, and I would lose the only thing that eternity ever offered me worth crying over. And there was nothing I could do about it but let it happen. I could have applied for Butis to be immortal, and even had the children brought along. It's been done. But that's exactly what I couldn't do. The very second I felt the baby's warm flesh against mine, I understood what made it so precious was that it couldn't last. I understand a cult of my worshippers settled there. That makes sense. You have to explain a mother vanishing from the childbed, leaving a mewling babe and astonished midwives somehow or other. Eric's, well, there's a mountain named after him. Although I don't think he ever got over my abandoning him. None of the stories they tell about him seem very good. And my Butis. No, I hardened my heart. If I had to lose them, let it be on my terms. I flinched. But do you blame me? I mean, why would anyone put themselves through that if they didn't have to? Mortals have no choice. You can't turn and flee back to Olympus, not the way I did. I left, and I never went back. Not in any tangible way. But you understand. Ever since I dragged myself out from behind that throne, wiped my tears, and assumed my place in the heavens, there hasn't been a day when I haven't gone back in my mind wondering what I'd do if I found myself faced with a second chance I may never get. For all my divinity, I cannot command anyone to either give or receive a heart.